I'm Martha Adams, 73 years old, and I still remember the exact sound of my son's voice through the phone. That day, I was stirring a cup of chamomile tea in my kitchen when the call didn't hang up properly, and I heard him laughing with his wife Jenna. "She's too stupid to realize what's going on," Greg said, like I wasn't even real, like I hadn't just wired the last of my savings into their home. "She practically handed it to us," Jenna added. "God, what an idiot." I set the spoon down quietly and stared out at the room where everything had suddenly shifted before I go any further. Let me know where you're listening from in the comments and tap that like button if you've ever been underestimated by the very people you love. I grew up in Western Ohio in a one-story brick house where my mother made pies from scratch and my father worked the kind of job that left his boots by the door every evening. We didn't have much, but we had steadiness, kindness, decency. Those things mattered more than money. I married Robert when I was 22, and for 42 years, he was my compass through life. Gentle, where I was firm and practical, where I could be too hopeful. When he died at 66, something in me folded inward, and I suppose that's when Greg stepped in to fill the space. He was our only child, always bright, always charming. After the funeral, he brought groceries each week, helped with paperwork. Called on Sundays, he said, "We're a team now. Mom, you, me, and Jenna, and when their little boy was born last year, they named him Caleb after Robert. I thought we were all tied together for good when they came to me about the house." Greg said it wasn't about them. It was for the baby. A legacy, a fresh start. They found a small place with a picket fence in a quiet neighborhood. Jenna's smile never wavered as she folded baby clothes on the couch. That morning, I handed Greg the final receipt at breakfast. They talked about school districts and backyard renovations, and Jenna squeezed my hand and said, "You've done so much for us already, but this changes everything." I believed her. I believed both of them. The paperwork had stacked up slowly. First it was co-signing the mortgage, then refinancing for a nursery, then another round for a business plan. Greg said it was temporary, said he'd keep me updated so I wouldn't have to worry about all the legal things he called me. His partner in all this, and I didn't think to question it. I just wanted to be needed that morning. I drove home after paying off their house. My heart full. I'd even brought a lemon loaf. Jenna liked from the farmer's market. The kitchen still smelled like lavender from the candle. She gave me last Christmas. I was rinsing out my teacup when the call came through. Greg said they needed to confirm something with the lender and asked me to stay on the line, so I did. And that's when I heard it. His voice. Jenna's laughter. The truth. Now I stood in that same kitchen, but it felt like someone else's house. The walls, the pictures, the soft ticking of the clock. None of it felt like mine anymore. I turned off the stove, poured out the cold tea, and whispered the only thing I knew to be true, not anymore. Greg and Jenna always knew how to make things sound like love. They never asked for money outright. It was always framed as teamwork, as legacy, as families sticking together. The first time Greg had called late one evening, calm earnest, asking if I'd consider co-signing the mortgage on the house they were trying to buy. He said it was mostly a formality, just to help with better interest rates. Jenna had followed up a few days later with a home-baked pie and a printed photo of the nursery paint samples, soft yellow walls, little forest animals in watercolor style. "This is where he'll grow up," she'd said, gently setting the pie on my counter. "Thanks to you." I'd signed the paperwork over a cup of tea right at my own kitchen table. Greg sat across from me explaining everything slowly, and I remember thinking how grown-up he looked, how sure of himself. "We'll keep you looped in on everything," he said. "This house is yours too, Mom. It's your name on the title." That made me feel steady somehow, like I wasn't just helping, I was part of something. When the second request came, it was for a renovation. "The nursery's too small," Jenna said. We didn't realize how quickly everything would start to feel cramped. He needs room to grow. She showed me a folder of design plans, even had a little swatch of the new carpet she wanted to use, sage green with soft white flecks. Again, I signed. No questions. Greg said it would just be a refinance, nothing complicated, and I didn't want to seem ungrateful or suspicious. I trusted him. He was my son. It went like that for over a year. A third time, then a fourth. Each time the reason shifted: a new business opportunity, better rates, debt consolidation. Greg always explained things so confidently. "This one's airtight," he said, handing me a sleek brochure for some marketing venture. "It'll benefit all of us." I nodded, pretending I understood the jargon, pretending my instincts weren't whispering for me to slow down. Robert would have asked more questions. He would have read every word. But I told myself, Greg wasn't like those people you heard about on the news. My son wasn't taking advantage. He was building something. For his family. The power of attorney papers came in a blue folder Jenna handed me one afternoon with a plate of snickerdoodles and a smile. "It's just a formality," she said. "We want to make sure you don't have to worry about anything if something comes up and you can't sign." I had just come back from a follow-up appointment for my knees, and I remember feeling tired. It sounded helpful. Less stress. Less paperwork. I signed. Looking back, it all feels so carefully orchestrated. The timing, the tone, the way they filled my weekends with dinners and errands and sudden visits. It felt like love. I didn't see that it was insulation. The day after I heard Greg's voice on the phone, the laughter, the cruel words, I woke up before sunrise and stood in my kitchen, the silence pressing in like a second skin. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I made tea just like always. Then I sat down at the table and opened the folders Greg had helped me set up months ago on the tablet he bought to make things easier. I had never looked past the first screen before. The folders were neatly labeled: mortgage, business, retirement. Everything looked harmless at first: copies of payments, tax statements, saving summaries. Then I found something I didn't recognize. A business account. My name on it. I tapped into it. The balance was large, but the transfers didn't make sense. Money moved in, then out, some of it landing in Greg's name. Another folder showed an investment package. My name again listed as guarantor. I opened a third: crypto transactions, loans taken out against assets I didn't remember offering. The dates stretched back more than a year. I set the tablet down. The rug beneath my feet, the one I hand-stitched the winter after Robert died, felt suddenly unfamiliar. Everything did. The house, the framed pictures, even the lamp in the corner that flickered when the bulb loosened. I stood, walked into Robert's old study, and pulled open the filing cabinet he used to guard like a vault. I hadn't touched it since the year he passed. Inside were folders, notes, ledgers, his handwriting, his steady logic. Every account balanced, every investment documented. He would have never let this happen. I found old emails Greg had forwarded to me, updates I barely remembered reading. "All on track, Mom," he wrote once. Just a few more documents, nothing to stress over. He made it sound like progress, like I was helping build something secure. But now, reading them again, I saw the pattern. He never included the fine print. Never explained what I was really signing. Just enough information to keep me quiet. I sat at the desk with Robert's yellow legal pad and began listing what I knew, what I suspected, what I needed to confirm. I wrote slowly, carefully: account names, business affiliations, loan amounts. I poured a second cup of tea, this one bitter no honey, and opened my old notebook. The one I hadn't touched since the memorial service. Its pages were still blank. I started to fill them. Each line became a map, a record, evidence. It wasn't about revenge. Not then. It was about seeing clearly, about finally sitting in the one seat I had avoided for too long, the one with the full view. The next morning, I dressed like I always did for errands. Slacks, blouse, soft cardigan. Willow, my cat, watched me from the hallway, her eyes slow and blinking. I kissed the top of her head before I left. "I'll be back," I whispered. Downtown was quiet. The financial office sat on the corner just past the bakery Robert used to love. I walked inside and asked if Mr. Colton was in. He'd known Robert. He'd known me. We weren't close, but we didn't need to be. He was the kind of man who respected paper. And I had plenty. When I sat across from him in his office, I folded my hands on my lap and said I'd like to review all my accounts. Every single one, joint private and otherwise. He blinked, surprised, but nodded. "Is there something wrong?" he asked. "I'm not sure yet," I said. "That's why I need your help." We spent an hour combing through everything power of attorney forms Greg had submitted, accounts I hadn't known existed, risky portfolios opened under my name. "He's got full access to quite a few assets," Mr. Colton said, gently. "Some of these could be very difficult to unwind." "Then let's begin," I told him. We started the revocation paperwork together. We called the bank. We flagged every account with my name. I signed slowly, clearly. No shaking hands. No hesitation. Just ink on paper, one stroke at a time. Before I left, I asked one more question. If the investments fail, how much am I legally exposed? Mr. Colton exhaled. "Significantly," he said. "But if we act now, if we document your objection, we can protect most of it." I shook his hand and stepped back into the afternoon sun. The sidewalk felt solid beneath me, the breeze sharp but clean. My name, my trust, my voice, they were coming back. That evening, Greg called. I didn't recognize the number at first. It was his cell, not the house. I let it ring once, twice. Then I picked up. "Hey, Mom," he said, too cheerful. "Just wanted to check in. How have you been?" We talked for a few minutes. Weather, Caleb's teething, Jenna's latest recipe. Then he shifted. "Actually, there's something I wanted to run by you," he said, voice softening. "It's this amazing opportunity, real once-in-a-lifetime stuff, but I need a little extra liquidity." I let him keep talking, every sentence a thread. "Just temporary," he said. "Nothing risky. I already drafted the paperwork, figured I'd bring it by in case you were open to it." "I'd like to talk in person," I said. "Somewhere quiet." He hesitated, then agreed. We picked a cafe. The next morning, I arrived early, recorder in my purse, tea in my hand. Greg smiled when he walked in. He sat across from me, easy as ever, ready to spin the next page of his story. He didn't know I'd already read the ending. Greg arrived right on time, just like I expected. He walked into the cafe wearing a navy blazer over his usual open-collar shirt, smiling like it was any other day. He spotted me at the corner table by the window, gave a little wave, then leaned in to kiss my cheek. "You look great, Mom," he said as he sat across from me. I thanked him gently and folded my hands around my teacup to keep them still. The cafe was warm, with low music playing and a steady hum of quiet conversation. Greg ordered his usual coffee, then made small talk, Caleb's new bedtime routine. Jenna's plans to try a vegetable garden in the spring, a friend who'd just moved out west. I let him talk. I nodded in the right places. My purse rested at my side, and I had made sure the small recording device inside was positioned correctly before he arrived. After a few minutes, Greg leaned forward, lowering his voice like we were about to share a secret. "I really appreciate you meeting me like this," he said. "You've always had our back, and this is big for us." I nodded, giving him the space to continue. "It's the next phase of the business. They've fast-tracked us for expansion way ahead of schedule. But to lock it in, I need to move quickly." He paused, waiting for me to ask. How much, I said quietly. He smiled, relieved. Not much, honestly. 200,000. It's just to secure the deal before the next round of investors come in. Temporary. Completely backed by what we've already built. He gave a little shrug. With the joint structure already in place, it'd be seamless. You wouldn't need to lift a finger. You've already prepared the paperwork, I asked, keeping my voice steady. Yeah, he said, like it was no big deal. Better to have it ready in case you're good with it. Saves time. I took a sip of tea and watched him. And Jenna's on board with this. Absolutely, he nodded quickly. We both are. We've gone through the numbers. It's solid. I tilted my head slightly, keeping my voice soft. You two really have built quite a system. Greg chuckled, easing into his seat. You taught me that. Always plan ahead, right? He kept talking after that, going into details about the projected profits, the partners' involved timelines, and why this opportunity couldn't wait. I let the words fall around me like background music. Each sentence gave me more than he realized. Every claim, every assurance captured, recorded, time-stamped. When he finally stopped, I reached out and gently placed my hand over his. Sweetheart, I appreciate you thinking of me, truly. But I'd like a day or two to go over everything. You know how I am. I like to be thorough. His smile twitched just barely, a flicker of something he tried to smooth over. Of course, he said, pulling his hand back. Absolutely. Take all the time you need. When we stood to leave, I hugged him. He didn't notice how tightly I held my purse. By the following afternoon, I was seated across from Laura Whitaker, a woman in her late 50s with quiet eyes and a firm voice. Her office was tidy, lined with framed degrees and books I recognized from Robert's shelves. My financial advisor had referred me to her that morning, and she'd cleared her afternoon to meet with me. Walk me through everything she said, flipping open a yellow legal pad. Don't leave anything out. So I told her. From the first co-signed mortgage to the power of attorney, the accounts I hadn't known existed, the transfers I didn't authorize. I showed her the file I'd built on my laptop, printed copies, spreadsheets, screenshots, emails, and then I played her the recording from the cafe. She sat still through the entire thing, only her brows tightening as Greg's voice filled the room. When it ended, she clicked off the recorder and folded her hands on the desk. They've left a long paper trail, she said. There's enough here to make this very actionable. Will I lose everything I asked? Not if we move quickly. She walked me through the options, revoking the power of attorney, freezing the accounts, drafting a formal letter that documented the pattern of financial abuse. Each step was clear, methodical. They may push back, she added, emotionally, legally, even with threats. You need to be prepared for that. I nodded. I'm ready. We started the process that same day. Legal notices were filed, account freezes initiated. Laura promised she would handle each contact personally. By the time I got home, the first confirmations had already come through. I sat down at my desk and pulled out Robert's old safe. Inside, I found my original will. I hadn't looked at it in years. Greg's name was on every line. Beneficiary, executor, contingency. I read it twice, then set it on the desk. I didn't feel angry, just clear. I picked up my pen and crossed through his name. Slowly. Once. Then again. I slid the old document back into the safe with a new label, for record only. The new version would be formalized soon. But that small act, just ink on paper, felt like the first moment I had come back into my own life. That night, the porch light flickered on like it always did. The same soft glow I used to leave on for Greg when he was in high school or coming home late from college. I watched it from the kitchen window, arms crossed gently in front of me. It wasn't waiting for anyone now. It was just a light. I didn't sleep much that night, but I didn't feel tired. I made a list before bed, what had been done, what was still to come. Mortgage title still in my name. Power of attorney officially revoked. Joint credit lines in the process of being frozen. Will rewritten. Tomorrow, I would visit the bank in person. No phone calls, no digital trail. Greg and Jenna still believed they had full access. They wouldn't see what was coming until the walls were already moving in. Willow curled at my feet as I switched off the light. I reached down and ran my hand over her back. Almost there, I whispered. The following morning, I was already dressed before the sun had touched the curtains. Slack soft blouse, a gray cardigan I hadn't worn since Easter. I sat for a few minutes in the front room, sipping coffee and watching the porch swing shift gently in the breeze. The old maple trees cast long shadows across the yard Robert had planted them the first year we moved in. I finished my cup, folded a list into my handbag, and locked the front door behind me. My first stop was the mortgage servicing office. I'd called ahead the day before and asked to speak with someone about title management. A woman named Sandra met me at the front desk. She was kind, maybe in her early 40s, with a patient voice and bright pink glasses. I explained I wanted to confirm my role on the property. She typed for a few minutes, then nodded. Yes, ma'am. The loan's paid off and closed just last month. Title reflects you and your son as co-owners, and any refinancing or changes would require both signatures, I asked. That's correct. Any changes to servicing or ownership must be approved by both parties. Good, I said quietly. I'd like to begin a quiet transfer review, for estate planning purposes. She hesitated just for a moment, but then nodded. We can flag your file. One of our senior staff will be in touch by end of day. Thank you, Sandra, I said. That's all I need today. Outside, the air felt heavier, like a thunderstorm had passed through, but hadn't yet broken. I sat in the car for a moment, staring at the folder in my lap. The house Greg and Jenna thought belonged to them wasn't protected the way they believed. It had always been under my name. That small detail was what made everything possible. From there, I drove to the bank. Not the local branch, but the main office across town where I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. The branch manager, a young man named Jeremy, brought me into his office after I handed over my ID and account card. I'd like to close the joint credit lines, I said, settling into the chair across from him. Freeze them effective immediately, and I want no notifications sent to the other parties until all closures are processed. He gave me a long look, then nodded slowly. You're the primary account holder. That's within your rights. Are you anticipating any issues, Mrs. Adams? Mrs. Adams? Possibly, I said. That's why I want everything airtight. I'll make sure of it, he said. He stepped out briefly to pull the authorizations and came back with a folder an inch thick. We went through it line by line, each signature requiring time initials and a witness. I signed everything with steady hands. By the time I returned home that evening, the day had moved quietly, but powerfully. I changed into my slippers, turned the kettle on, and sat at the kitchen table with a fresh notebook. I opened the page and wrote down 4 clean lines, mortgage flagged for transfer. Joint credit accounts frozen. Power of attorney revoked. Will revised and secured. I folded the page and tucked it behind a photo of Robert I kept inside the drawer. In the picture, he's wearing a flannel shirt and holding a tomato from the garden like it was some sort of prize. The summer sun behind him looks almost too bright to be real. Willow jumped up beside me, curling her tail around my forearm. Her breathing was soft, rhythmic. The sound made the whole room feel steadier. I whispered, "We're almost there." The next 2 weeks passed in small, deliberate steps. I visited the attorney again. We reviewed every document. My new trust was finalized, sealed, and backed with legal language that left no room for contest. Every point was double-checked, notarized, and stored in both digital and paper form. I stopped answering Greg's calls. If he noticed something was wrong, he didn't say anything outright. Jenna sent a few texts, pictures of the baby, questions about dinner next month, polite reminders about the upcoming family brunch, but I let them sit unread. Then, on a Thursday evening just before 7, it happened. Greg and Jenna were out to dinner. I didn't need to be there. I could picture it clearly. Some trendy bistro Jenna had found on a blog. Linen napkins, candlelight, a special bottle of wine. They would have been celebrating another deal signed, another investor pulled in. Greg probably ordered steak. Jenna would have smiled across the table, pleased with how far they'd come. Then the waiter returned. Credit card declined. Greg probably laughed. "Try it again," he would have said. "Might be a bank thing." Second card declined again. That's when the silence started. Not a shouting kind of panic. The quiet kind. The kind that stiffens shoulders, lowers voices, fills the space between two people with questions they don't want to ask. Jenna would have leaned in, voice tight, trying not to show it. Greg still holding the card, jaw clenched. At the same time, a thick envelope was delivered to their mailbox at home. Inside, a letter from the mortgage company. Title review initiated. Property reassessment required. Acceleration clauses pending. That evening, I was home, a cup of tea, a slice of leftover cornbread on the plate beside me. My phone lit up once, then again. Greg's name on the screen. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Instead, I picked up the call from Laura Whitaker. "Everything's processed," she said. "Deed structures filed. Authorizations closed. All points are now documented. Your filings are complete. And if they try to fight this, they don't have legal standing. Not anymore." I sat for a long time after the call, hands resting in my lap. The house was quiet, but not empty. The kind of quiet that holds weight. That says, "This is yours again." Outside the kitchen window, the trees swayed gently in the dusk light. Greg used to climb that tree when he was 8. Robert tied the first swing to it when we moved in. I didn't move from my chair. Willow padded across the floor and curled near the heater vent. I thought they still don't realize what's already gone. The knock at my door came just after 8. 3 sharp raps, hard and impatient. I had already set the recorder behind the hallway vase an hour earlier. I walked to the front door calmly and opened it to find Greg standing on the porch, jaw tight, arms tense. Jenna stood behind him, coat still buttoned, lips drawn in a straight line. "Mom," Greg said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We need to talk." I stepped back and motioned them inside with a soft nod. "Of course, sweetheart. Come in." They moved into the living room, where Laura Whitaker was already seated in the armchair near the fireplace. She rose slightly as they entered, then sat back down without a word. Her briefcase rested at her side, unopened, but not unnoticed. Greg froze the moment he saw her. "Who is this?" "This is my attorney," I said gently. "Laura Whitaker. She's helping me with some overdue estate adjustments." "Estate adjustments," he repeated, laughing once under his breath. "What is going on?" Jenna didn't say anything. She remained near the fireplace, her eyes flicking between me and Laura, like she was waiting for instructions. I sat down on the couch and gestured for Greg to take the seat across from me. "Please sit." He didn't move. "You froze our accounts. The mortgage company's threatening title reassessment. Our credit lines are gone. Do you have any idea what you've done?" I looked at him calmly. "I know exactly what I've done. I'm protecting what's mine." Greg stepped forward, voice rising. "You're destroying everything we've built. I built this with you." I didn't raise my voice. "You built it on me, without my knowledge, without my consent. That's not partnership, Greg. That's theft." He scoffed and turned away, hands on his hips. "You're overreacting. We've talked about all of this. You knew, no?" I said. "You talked. I trusted. You used that trust to benefit yourself." Jenna finally spoke. We were trying to build a future. For Caleb. For the family. Isn't that what you always said you wanted? I turned to her. I did. But now I understand. You never saw me as family. You saw me as a resource. Greg slammed his hands on the back of the chair but still didn't sit. You're ruining your own family, he said, voice cracking. No, I said softly. You ruined it the moment you stopped seeing me as a person. Beside me, Laura opened her briefcase and slid a folder onto the coffee table. These documents outline every unauthorized transaction you initiated using your mother's name, she said calmly. Greg's mouth opened, then closed. He stared at the folder like it might explode. They've been submitted, Laura continued, to the state's Financial Fraud Division, Elder Abuse Unit, and Identity Review Office. Jenna took a step back. Greg shook his head. You destroy your own son for what, spite? I stood slowly. Not for spite, Greg. For dignity. He didn't speak again. Jenna reached for his arm, whispering something I couldn't hear, but he pulled away. She tugged once more. This time, he followed her to the door. Neither of them looked back as they left. When the door shut behind them, I stood for a moment without moving. My hands stayed still, my breathing steady. Laura remained seated, watching me quietly. After a pause, she opened her briefcase again and pulled out a second folder. This one was heavier. There's something else they don't know, she said, setting it down in front of me. I didn't ask. I already knew. The full submission packet, she confirmed. All recordings, contracts, email threads, voicemails. The agencies have already acknowledged receipt as of this morning. I let my fingers rest on the folder's cover. I didn't open it. They thought today was their chance to take back control, I said. To steer the story. Laura nodded. But the story's already written. Greg still believed I might fold. That if he just looked sorry enough, I'd unravel. That I'd forget. That I'd give in to keep the peace. He didn't realize the entire structure had already been dismantled quietly, piece by piece. Laura stood and gathered her things. We'll proceed with the property transfer next week, after the investigation confirms their notice. Once that's complete, the trust will be firewalled. No contest clause included. I nodded. Make sure that part is airtight. She paused at the doorway. You know, most people wait until they're gone to protect their estate. You're doing it while you're still standing. I looked out the front window where the porch light glowed against the dark sky. I've been standing for a long time, I said. Just in silence. She smiled once and left without another word. I walked over to the fireplace mantel and took down the photo that had lived there for years. Greg and Jenna, arms around my shoulders, Caleb in his little blue sweater. I turned it over in my hands. Then I opened the drawer of Robert's desk, set the photo inside, and closed it gently. The wind picked up outside. I could hear the chains on the porch swing, knocking softly against the wood. Willow jumped up onto the windowsill, her tail curling close to her body. I walked over and rubbed her back, then looked out into the night. They still didn't know what they'd lost, but they would. 2 days after Greg and Jenna left my house, the first call came. It didn't come to me. It went straight to Greg. That afternoon, I found a voicemail waiting on my phone. Jenna's voice was tight, like she was holding her breath between every word. Martha, please call us. Someone from the state investigator's office just contacted Greg. They're saying things we don't even understand. Fraud, financial abuse. This has gone too far. Please, we can fix this as a family. I listened once. Then I saved the message and filed it in the secure folder with the rest documents, recordings, bank printouts, legal notices. I labeled it Justification Audio Number 23. That evening, I stayed home. I made soup from scratch and ate by the front window, the light outside fading into a soft gray. Willow curled up at the foot of the couch. The house felt calm, untouched by the storm brewing beyond its walls. By morning, the first ripple had become a wave. Laura called me just after 9. Her voice was brisk, measured. "State investigators have accepted the full submission," she said. "They're moving forward with charges: fraudulent asset use, unauthorized signature filings, financial elder exploitation. The accounts tied to your name have been locked down. The trust has been sealed. No further legal access from either party." I sat at the dining room table with my hand resting on my tea mug. "Good," I said quietly. "There's more," she continued. "Greg's business partners have begun withdrawing. Once the investigation entered public record, his name was flagged on internal review. Several funding deals have collapsed already." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. "Jenna's name is appearing in the audit trail," she added. "That may trigger a separate inquiry." "Let it," I said. Later that day, I took a walk through the neighborhood. It was cool out, mid-50s, with a slight breeze. I passed the school where Greg used to run track and the corner bench where Robert used to wait for me when I came back from grocery shopping. I stayed out longer than usual. The air felt clearer. By the time I returned, I had 3 missed calls and 2 texts, all from Greg. The last message read, "Please." I messed up. "Don't let this ruin everything. I never meant for it to go this far. Please, Mom, call me." I set the phone down without opening the others. That night, I sat in Robert's old chair by the fireplace. The one with the soft arms and the wooden legs that creaked just a bit when you leaned back. I watched the flames shift and rise, and across the room, Willow jumped onto the arm of the couch and tucked her paws under. "They're starting to feel it," I whispered. "Just like we knew they would." The next morning, Laura called again. "The trust is now legally firewalled," she said. "No contest clauses are in place. Should either party attempt to challenge your decisions through emotional appeal or future guardianship, claims your filings already disqualify them permanently." I took a slow breath and let it sit in the space around me. "Then we're finished. They can protest all they want," she said. "The documents will answer for you." That afternoon, Jenna's family released a formal statement through a lawyer. They said Greg's behavior had been unexpected, that they were deeply disappointed, that they had no prior knowledge of the choices he made. I folded the article and slid it into the manila folder with the others. Across the room, the wind rattled the front storm door. The chains on the porch swing tapped gently against the railing. I stood at the window for a moment and looked out at the yard, the same lawn Greg used to mow on Saturday mornings when he was 12, the same flower bed Jenna once helped me plant when she first joined the family. Tulips still came up every spring, but the soil felt different now. I turned away from the glass and walked to the kitchen, the house quiet except for the creak of floorboards and the low hum of the refrigerator. I filled the kettle, set it on the stove, and waited. They would call again. I knew that, but I wouldn't be the one answering. The official letter arrived on a Tuesday. Cream envelope, embossed seal. I didn't open it right away. It sat on the counter beside the mail basket while I made myself a sandwich and fed Willow. I didn't need to read it to know what it was. Laura had already called that morning. She said the settlement had cleared. Every clause I'd put into motion executed. Every account Jenna and Greg had touched, reversed frozen, or returned under judgment. I finally opened it after dinner. The living room was quiet except for the faint ticking of the wall clock. The pages were clean, without fuss. Just names, dates, amounts, language that left no room for doubt. The home deed was back under my name alone. The retirement accounts were restored. The duplicate trust fund Greg had quietly created dissolved under fraudulent activity. The judgment against him was substantial. Nearly half of it would be withheld from any future earnings for at least the next 10 years. He hadn't called in days. Neither had Jenna. The voicemail I received the next day broke the silence. It wasn't angry, it was tired. Greg's voice didn't sound like itself hollow, almost distant. "Mom," he said, "I can't believe you'd go this far." I don't know what to say. Jenna's been crying nonstop. Caleb doesn't understand why we had to move. I lost the firm. They're saying I misrepresented documents, but I never meant for it to come to this. You could have just talked to me. You didn't have to destroy us. He didn't say sorry. Not once. I deleted the message and moved on. That weekend I hosted the garden club for tea. It had been years since I'd let anyone into the back garden. Robert used to keep the lawn trimmed just so. I'd fallen out of the habit after he passed. But this spring, I'd put in the work. Mulched every bed, replanted the foxglove and peonies, cleaned out the shed. The women came with scones, lemon bars, little tins of loose-leaf tea. We sat on the patio under the old umbrella while the birds hopped around the feeder. Judy complimented the rosemary hedge. Clara asked about the stone path. No one asked about Greg, or the lawsuit, or the headlines that had come and gone over the last month. They didn't need to. I was at the bakery the following Thursday when I saw Jenna. She didn't notice me at first. She was by the counter holding Caleb on one hip asking about a cake order. Her hair was pulled back in a rough bun, her clothes wrinkled. When she turned and saw me, her face shifted, but not with surprise. Not even with shame. She gave me a thin nod, like we were two women who'd passed each other at the church potluck too many times to ignore. I nodded back. Then I picked up my order and left. Later that afternoon, I found a letter tucked into my mailbox. No stamp, just folded paper inside a plain white envelope. Her handwriting. Martha, I can't sleep most nights. Greg's angry all the time. We're staying at his cousin's for now. I know you probably think I deserve all this, and maybe I do. But Caleb keeps asking about you. He misses your voice, your baking, the way you used to hum when you carried him to the sunroom. I won't ask you to forgive us. I just wanted you to know that. I placed the letter in a drawer. Not with the legal files, not with the receipts. Just in the drawer beside the sewing kit, where I keep the holiday cards and bits of ribbon I might use again one day. That evening, the phone rang again. This time, I answered. Greg's voice was quiet. I wanted to let you know, he said, we're pulling Caleb from his preschool. We can't afford it anymore. Jenna's picked up some part-time work. I'm still figuring things out. I didn't respond. I know you think I'm a monster, he continued, but I really believed I could make it all work. I thought if I just borrowed enough time, enough leverage, it'd all come back tenfold. I thought I was protecting my family. I listened. I guess I never really thought about what it would cost you. Still, I didn't answer. I'm sorry, Mom, he said at last. The silence stretched. He didn't fill it. After a while I said, I hope you're serious about changing. Not for me, for Caleb. He let out a breath. I am. We didn't say goodbye. The line just clicked off. I stood there for a long moment, the receiver still in my hand. The windows had gone dark, and across the yard the porch light flickered on. The house was quiet again, and it stayed that way. The porch light stayed on that night, casting a soft glow over the front steps. I sat at the kitchen table, a cup of tea growing cold in my hands, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of wind brushing the side of the house. There was nothing left to sort, no more forms to sign or decisions to make. The storm had passed, and in its place, stillness. Caleb's crayon drawing was still clipped to the fridge. A smiling sun in the corner, stick figure arms reaching out from a lopsided house. He'd drawn me with a purple dress and big round glasses, just like the pair I wore when he was younger. I hadn't taken it down. I didn't have the heart to. A week later, a small envelope arrived. No return address, just a single sheet folded inside. It was from Jenna. She'd found work at a local library and was taking night classes. Greg had started doing contract work, nothing big but enough to keep them afloat. She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask for forgiveness either. Just wrote that they were trying and that Caleb had started sleeping through the night again. He'd stopped asking why I wasn't there. I didn't write back. I didn't need to. I spent the fall tending the garden and sorting through the attic. I donated Robert's old suits, boxed up the silver we never used, and finally replaced the curtains in the guest room. Some days were quiet, others were full. The silence no longer felt like an absence, it felt like peace. At church one Sunday, Clara leaned over during the hymn and whispered, "You look lighter these days, Martha?" I smiled and nodded. I knew what she meant. Justice hadn't come with a bang. It came in slow, measured steps, in the return of my home, my dignity, and the simple comfort of a quiet morning, in the knowledge that I had not been erased. There's something no one tells you about growing older. You don't stop loving the people who hurt you, but you learn where to put them. You learn how to live with the space they left and how to stop making yourself smaller to fit inside their shadows. I didn't do what I did out of vengeance. I did it because I mattered. Because integrity isn't something you retire from. And because even when your voice shakes, you still get to speak. So, if you're listening now, and you've been made to feel like your worth ended the moment someone else decided it did, I hope you'll remember this. You're not too old to reclaim your place. You're not too late to begin again. You are allowed to take up space in your own life. And if this story reminded you of something you've walked through or something you're walking through now, feel free to share it in the comments. I'll be here reading quietly, just like you are now. Thank you for listening.